China's been producing 600 metric tons of gold, which never leaves China, for at least 2 decades alone. There's 12,000 tons.
Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. And tonight, part two of my interview with London Paul of the Sirius Report, where he talks about how much gold China might actually have, because as they've sat there saying they haven't added much gold over the past 15 years, I think most of us don't really believe that to be the case. And I think you'll be interested to hear what Paul has to share tonight. So that's coming your way in a moment. Real quick before we get started, tonight's video is sponsored by Miles Franklin, where you can find gold, silver, platinum, or palladium products, buy or sell. Any questions about anything gold or silver or precious metals related, can get pricing or more information or questions answered at arcadia@milesfranklin.com. And with that said, let's find out how much gold China actually has now. While the U.S. government is, doing quantitative easing packages, building new tanks as a solution, we see a lot of the countries you've mentioned in the first half of the talk, like China, Russia, and perhaps you could also touch on Iran, are seeing what's happening, and they're responding by buying gold. And I know it's an interesting topic. I've heard some of your thoughts before on how much gold. Maybe we could look at all three of them, but start with China. How much gold do you think China actually has at this point?
China has roughly 40,000 tons of gold, and people immediately go, no, that's rubbish. Well, China's been producing 600 metric tons of gold, which never leaves China, for at least 2 decades alone. There's 12,000 tons before you even turn around. Then, for 2.5 years, around about 2012, 2013, 1,000 tons of gold was moved from the West to China every month. That's 2.5 years. 30 months, 30,000 tons. Not every single ton stayed in China. Well, then there's historically all the gold that China's accumulated, and though China's bought gold up in the markets, in the last 5 years in far bigger quantities. The idea China's got the tonnage of gold it has is a joke, because you only have to just factor in what they produce annually. That alone destroys that idea. So people say they don't have that. Yes, they do have that. Russia has similar amounts of tonnage. I mean, a lot of that goes from internal mining. They've bought enormous amounts of gold for decades. And also, they had an enormous amount of gold that dated from 100 years ago, from the sort of Tsar era, where the gold, fortunately, from the Russian nation's perspective, wasn't stolen. Iran, I can't give you a figure, but they have enormous gold reserves as well. And no surprise, that's one of the sort of backbone of the Eurasian axis. You've got the kind of what I call the Berlin, Moscow, Tehran, Beijing axis. That's the backbone of the Eurasian axis. Okay, there's many other poles, but that's kind of just the fulcrum of it. And that's why there's a big move to try and destroy Iran, try to make out Iran's this hostile nation who wants to blow up the world, etc., etc. Well, no surprise that whenever the US has a bogeyman, there's a reason for it. It's usually because they won't play ball with the US over US foreign policy and US dollar adoption, etc., etc. So, yeah, they do have enormous gold reserve. They fully intend to back their currencies at the right time with gold. And people say you can't do that. Well, here's the thing. China has already calculated what it thinks the gold price should be to back its currency. All it needs to do one day is come out and say, we're backing our currency with gold, and we're resetting the gold price to this figure. Now, is anyone saying what's going to happen as soon as they do that? And China knows this. There'll be this mad rush for arbitrage where everyone in the West is going, I'm going to sell my gold because, I bought it for this price and I'm going to sell it for multiple times that price to. Yep. And then what does China, well, not everyone will do that, but a lot of people will. And then China will effectively have massive control over the entire gold supply in the world. And could they do that? Yes, they can do that. So you can reset the gold price to any figure you want to back your currency. So the idea you can't do that, I'm sorry, it's just nonsense. And the reason the US doesn't do it is because the US has no gold. Hence why it doesn't. Hence why when the Germans said, "Give us our gold back," they couldn't give them the gold back they originally had because it had been magically rehypothecated, sold to someone else. And also, remember when China took delivery of some gold and it turned out to be gold-plated tungsten bars, which China was not very amused about? I wonder how many other of the alleged tonnage that exists in the United States is gold-plated or gold-plated tungsten bars. Well, we'll leave people to speculate on that. But yeah, fundamentally, that is a huge driving factor in why they're going to move to a sound monetary policy.
Quick question, because you mentioned how gold is leased, rehypothecated. Let's say someone who's listening today went down to their local coin shop and they bought 1/10 of an ounce of gold, a gold dime. Mm-hmm. And they held it in their hand, they owned it, they paid for it, it's not leased out. Would that person own more gold than the US government and Federal Reserve?
It's possible, yes. There has been, I've heard rumors, well, maybe more than rumors for a number of years, that there may be a couple of tons of gold, actual real gold. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, jokes aside, it might be true that there's literally nothing, but a lot of that gold was squirreled away. I mean, what people don't realize, a lot of that gold, well, some of that gold was used for the creation of the European Union. Basically, the gold was stolen from the Americans by the Bush administration at the time to finance the European Union.
It wasn't long-term capital. I know Rob Kirby's talked about long-term capital.
I don't really know the story of what went on with long-term capital. Yeah, Rob has the insight. I can't really comment because I don't know anything about it. It's kind of something that bypassed me. But anyway, but going back to the original point, the US has very little gold because at the end of the day, if it had it, now would have been the time to go, well, let's take the brakes off, let gold go to wherever it should do, and we may be able to resolve, the problems we have. But the fact is they don't have any, and they don't want to be constrained by sound monetary policy because then it blows their budgets. And as we said, they couldn't even probably spend 75 billion a year on the US military. Well, who's that going to upset if they don't do that? So it's an enormous problem that exists for the US, and it's as much an ideological kind of mindset that it's against the DNA of US administration and the deep state there to say we're going to embrace gold because it means then they're going to have to cut their cloth accordingly and live within their means. And let's face it, no one can deny the US has not lived within its means for a very, very long time, since the 70s.
Why do that when you can do quantitative easing, right?
Yes. So yeah, I think one other point worth, I mean, we probably won't have the time we can discuss some of the big trade deals with China on the time. One thing we don't have a lot of discussion about in the West, and that's the other thing, is this concept of digital currencies. And immediately people go, they're going to reissue digital currencies and phase out cash. Well, forgive me, but most people already have effectively a digital bank account because I don't tend to have my entire contents of my bank in cash stored under a mattress in one of the bedrooms in the house, and neither does anyone else. And the cashless society thing, we've discussed this before very briefly. Just alone, the entire $1 trillion a year narco industry depends on cash, from the person who's selling the raw material to the person who obviously buys drugs on the high street, wherever it's the UK or the United States. The idea of a cashless society is not a reality, because if it did, it would destroy much of the deep state disgusting, nefarious empire involving not just narcotics. But going back to the digital yuan, because people haven't talked about it, they've obviously rolled out very, very quickly a number of trials of the digital yuan that will allow individuals, you can send money to each other using smartphones, they've done pilot studies, which you can to check whether you can use it with vendors, so someone can go into a store and purchase things. They're being given like free money, sort of like 200 yuan, $30 or something, for $35, and in programs like 100,000 people, and they can buy products in stores. And so far the test has gone extremely well. You can use it online, and they want to assess obviously if the platform can handle digital yuan payments with heavy usage. So they did a trial on December the 12th. There's a thing in China called the Double 12, where it's a major shopping event that happens, and it seems that trial went extremely well. And they've obviously expanded it into the Hebei province, and that was done with under the auspices of the PBOC, the People's Bank of China. They've also done cross-border payments with the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, and they're obviously going to extend this and do more and more of these trials with person-to-person transfers, online retail. You can use it for taxes, utilities, and they're running trials in 28 areas, so major cities: Shanghai, Beijing, Tianjin, Shenzhen, etc. And they're now putting a legal framework in, and then they issued some draft legislation last autumn to make it legal tender. They've also filed about 150 patents to the digital yuan by, I think that's probably last April, May time. That's the entire process, from issuance and circulation to related apps. Now, for most people, what's the concept of a digital currency, and what is the PBOC's? It's called the DCEP. Well, obviously it's legal tender issued by the PBOC. So in essence, the argument is, well, what's the difference between a digital yuan and holding cash? Well, actually not an awful lot. And China isn't phasing out cash. It's saying, here's an alternative. And it will actually ultimately supplant WeChat and Alipay, which are enormous payment systems. The reason is that it's, of course, backed by the credit of the Chinese state, and therefore no one can refuse to accept it. Currently, vendors go, well, actually, I don't really want to use WeChat or Alipay, and they don't have to. But obviously, with the DCEP, they're constrained where they have to use it. The differences, as well, is WeChat and Alipay is completely dependent on the internet. But therefore, if you don't have the internet on your phone, you can't trade. With this DCEP, it supports two-way offline payments and transactions. So you can conduct a trade as soon as you reconnect to the internet, it just processes the trade. So because it's legal tender of the country, effectively, therefore, it's going to be all-encompassing. And in a sense, you put cash in your physical wallet if you do. Well, the digital currency has a digital wallet, and it'll have all this functionality, which is gradually being rolled out. What you can do is you can convert your existing bank funds into this digital yuan on a one-to-one basis, and then therefore there's this marrying up process, because people say, will it create inflation? No, it doesn't, because it effectively, it happens instantaneously, but there's a 1 yuan in your bank, you transfer into your digital wallet, you've got 1 digital yuan in your wallet, and the 1 yuan in your bank account disappears. And it's very easy to do. It's a very seamless process. You utilize your existing bank account, so you can exchange digital yuan, and therefore, as we said, once this transaction is taking place instantaneously, your bank account reduces by that same amount. It can be used for payroll transfers, a multitude of other payments, and therefore all you need to do is, the vendor has this application. The person like you and I going into shops or online has the application, and then you can buy goods through that. It's a very, very seamless, and it's an incredibly fast payment system. It's supposed to be, it's cryptology is supposed to be, well, the chance of fraud is very, very minimal. The other thing with when you currently use mobile phone or payment systems like in China with WeChat and Alipay, it's not anonymous. This is absolutely anonymous. It's completely anonymous. in the whole process. So no one's tracking what people are spending. And people say, I don't believe that's the case. Well, it is the case. And no, it doesn't create inflation, as we've just said. And the question is, why are they doing this? Because it's not a replacement for cash. A lot of people still use cash quite heavily in China. There are a number of reasons. First, it will reduce money laundering, and I think it will counter, terrorist financing. They also think, therefore, if there is any legitimacy in terms of transaction, then people say, oh, well, this is the state impinging on people. Well, okay, Western people will feel like that. Chinese people don't care. They think it's absolutely fine. They don't have a problem with that. It's not to replace cash in circulation. It's a complementary payment system. So it's a natural development for China for these reasons. They're a world leader in digital payment systems. The digital currency means you don't have to have a bank account. Now, the great thing about this, if you look at huge parts of the world that are nations who have limited access to banking, this is an absolute huge item. This is why China will roll this out internationally. It's also why it'll be outside the SWIFT system. So effectively nations can go, like Venezuela, we've got an entire system where we can trade internationally with everybody outside the SWIFT system. And it's very easy to use. It's, whether you're a vendor, whether you're a person like you and me who want to buy goods or services from whatever company. And they're instantaneous, it's transnational, therefore it's great for international trade settlements with China, therefore it massively internationalizes the yuan, and it addresses debt unsustainability, it addresses a lack of transparency and corruption. As we say, it doesn't depend on SWIFT, so that's a major bonus for the entire world. And therefore, because China's rotating its economy, and therefore it's become more self-sufficient, the rest of the world's more dependent on China. So China goes, okay, you want to interact with us internationally, let's use the digital yuan. And so countries in Asia, Africa, Latin America, they're all ready to embrace this. And this really, it's not a world reserve currency, it's an international payment system that nations will embrace. And it's going to be utilized in the RCEP, the enormous trade deal with the ASEAN nations. That's the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. So people get an idea that this is a huge development. Now, people in the West, most people don't even realize that it exists, that it's actually being rolled out and implemented. And then they're all sat there going, well, we're going to have a digital dollar. And everyone's going, well, what use is this digital dollar? The fact is, with what China's doing, it absolutely has an international facility to use it. They're trialing it domestically to make sure it works and can handle the capacity, functionality work. Then you're going to roll out. And one day, China's going to come out and say, guess what? Venezuela's using the digital yuan. Yeah. Most African nations are. The Eurasia's using it. This is a whole new payment system in non-dollar terms. And then the final sort of icing on the cake is, and we're backing the yuan with gold, so this digital yuan is by extension backed by gold. There you have a new international financial system. It's being rolled out, people are not even seeing it happening. And this is why I say they're all focused on sensationalism going on in the West, and all these ridiculous stories. And then these are the groundbreaking stories that are happening and few people are paying attention to.
Well, Paul, I guess on one hand, I can understand that because I'm sure there's people out there just heard everything you say and their jaws on the floor. Although fortunately, the positive side to that is that you do go research all these things and you share it in a podcast. So if people are wondering, how would I ever stay posted to all these things? You've got the solution. So perhaps in wrapping up, you can just let them know where they can find the podcast and the kind of things you share there.
Okay, yeah, we do, well, equivalent to 5 podcasts a week, which is, they're each 20 minutes. Sometimes we bolt 2 together as 40 minutes. I mean, you know this, Chris. And so we do about 100 minutes a week. It's very intense. It's very detailed. It's focusing on all the developments, what's actually going on. what's shaping the future, why the past is falling away, and it's in economics, it's finance, it's geopolitical, it's technology. And we do it 5 a week. We make it very cheap and affordable because we think that such information should be accessible to everybody. So the price has never changed in 4.5 years. It's $4.75 a month. And you have full access to all the podcasts. You can go back if you really want to. We're up to, I've lost kind of count now. I think it's about 1,800. I can't. So I've kind of lost count some ways where we're up to. I think it's around sort of 18. No, sorry, not 1,800. 1,080. What am I saying? And they're all freely available. You can download them because obviously it's a paywall, and you log into our website. And you've been a subscriber for quite some time, Chris, and obviously you enjoy what we put out there. But it's very detailed. I try and waste no words because I think it's extremely important we get these important points in our track record for exposing things a long time before they happen, and what the significance of seemingly unimportant events are. And I think we do a reasonably good job, and we've had a lot of very long-term subscribers, and we keep getting new ones, and we get a lot of positive feedback. So we feel it's worth continuing to do this.
Yeah, perhaps in summation, maybe I would say that the value, it's like equivalent of trading CNN for the Sirius Report is like trading fiat dollars for silver or gold. And what else could you add to that? So Paul, sure appreciate you being here and everything you shared. We'll do this again a lot sooner next time, but wow, 2021 is it's off and kicking, and it's going to be fascinating to see what comes up.
Absolutely. I mean, we're in a decade of immense change, immense turbulence, challenges, but you have to position yourselves as best you can in the eye of the storm and observe what's happening and understand what's happening, and don't get consumed by the rhetoric, which is designed to put fear into people. Because once you're sucked into the fear mode, it's very hard to get out of it.
Well, again, the link for the Sirius Report in the description field below. Paul, thank you as always for joining me, and we'll look forward to checking back in again soon.
Yes, and a pleasure, and thanks very much again, Chris.